The Rambam is speaking about that a person, he has to address the issue that we're not perfect. And since we don't know exactly when our lives will end, we always have to address our shortcomings. Okay, you're there. So one has to do tshuva continuously to always weed out the problems. So the Rambam says, "Al toma shem tshuva elameh averu sheish ben maseh." Person thinks one only has to do tshuva if you transgress through action. You know, when we were kids, there was an expression, that words will never harm you. It's only sticks and stones will break your bones, but words will never harm you. No, within Judaism, speech has very negative ramifications. Saying things, thinking things, looking at things. Even though it's not a physical act, it actually compromises our spirituality. Al tomar shein tshuva ela me'aver sheish b'maseh kagon znus gezel geneva. One has an illicit sexual relationship. One steals openly on the QT. El kshem shetzarach odom loshe me'elu. Just as one has to do tshuva from those areas of spiritual regression, you have to really introspect. If you have certain beliefs or certain questions, which are inappropriate for a Jew, you question God's existence, God's providence, or you question God's, you claim there's iniquity in God's justice. This is all has to be corrected, because there's no iniquity in God's justice. Sheishlo loshev min akas. Rambam writes that anger is one of the worst, most negative characteristics. Person just get angry. Anger is something which could lead a person to terrible things. Umin ha'eva, person has envy. Umin ha'kino, eva is like different levels of envy. Umin ha'chitul, umridifus ha'momo, we're talking about greed. People literally lead lives of greed. It's like they're consumed by it. Va'kovod, divas ha'momo, one pursues money, one pursues honor. Redivas ha'macholos, person lives within the context of gluttonous behavior, eats, gouges himself. Minakol, you could eat kosher, but you live to eat rather than eat to live. It's a problem. Then what's driving it? What's controlling your life? Your physical characteristics are dictating your life. Yazov Rosha. Yeah. Every one of these areas has to be addressed with tshuva. You have to upgrade. These kinds of these sins, although they're not associated with action, are more severe than something with an action, because this affects your whole function, your whole perspective. Person is immersed in eating. He is consumed with greed. That means that dictates his life. Person does an act once or twice, whatever it is, he did the wrong thing. But that's not synonymous with the person. But a person is driven. He lives, breathes, and eats money. That's all he does. Who live for Shmem? It's not easy. Once a person has an addiction in any area of his life, to be able to extricate yourself is very difficult. So especially those areas need addressing. The Russia must leave his way. It's not the action, it's the way, it's the manner. It's an addiction. Certain people, the moment they open their eyes, they're at it again. Whether it's the way they do business, the way they process other people, what their value is, who they are, what they expect, immediately it starts consuming the person. We're talking about greed. Sometimes you go for a blood test and they get the vein, that tube fills with blood almost within moments. Just the person opens his eyes, the moment he starts breathing and he comes to his senses. No, where is he going today? What deal does he want to do? What's going to upset him? Whether it's the anger, whether it's the greed, whether it's the envy, whether it's the eating. First thing up, what is he eating? What restaurant he's going to? Who's he going to be involved with? That means he's driven by all these negative conditionings which he has. I always say, what's the key to succeed in life if you know what success is? Focus. Less distraction. Okay? Let's say a person has very few needs. He doesn't have envy, doesn't have anger. He's not distraction because he has gluttonous needs. So all that, which is a very major distraction, you're sitting at your desk trying to focus on a report, and right away, you think about lunchtime. You study, which restaurant am I going to? Who am I going to meet? Who am I going to ingratiate myself to? Who do I want? Which person upsets me? All this is distraction in life. Could you imagine you don't have any of this? How easy it would be to focus? And you would succeed to a greater degree because there's less interference in your mind, in your clarity, and especially when it comes to your spirituality. All this is doesn't play together with they don't coexist, these two situations. They're contradictory. Now, Chofetz Chaim always speaks about whisperings in our ears. The evil inkling always whispers in our ears. You think it's that easy? Do you think you succeed? What are you wasting your time? It'll last a day, it'll last an hour, until the next person you meet and you get upset. So why even attempt to make a correction? You're permanently handicapped. And a person says, and even if I do tshuva, can I even hold up a candle to these people who have been tzaddikim all their lives? I'm a nothing, I'm a nobody. See, right away he plays on your ego. Ego is very crucial in a person's motivation. But if I'm going to be turned, I'm going to be ignored. I'm going to be seen by like this lowly Baal Tshuva. Where have you been all these years? So what's the point? It's all futility. It's not the case. A person's a Baal Tshuva in terms of his level of accomplishment, as we'll see in a moment. It's valued by God even to a greater degree than a person's been a tzaddik all his life. What other people value don't value Terrell what they value. It's what you should know for yourself. Al yidaber odom Baal Tshuva shu beruchok mimalsa tzadikim. A Baal Tshuva shouldn't think for a moment that he's far from what a tzaddik has been a tzaddik all his life. Because of his past sins, deliberate, inadvertent, whatever they were. If he did tshuva, that shouldn't take him down. That shouldn't weigh on his mind. That is not a blemish. The past is not a blemish. Ein adova kain elo o v'nechmanhu lifnei abore. This person is beloved and precious before the Creator. Kilo chotem olam, as if he never sinned in his life. Could you imagine an errant child goes off, the father has tremendous aggravation and pain, and all of a sudden the child turns over another leaf, comes back to the father, and the father had pain not to be understood because he felt how the child destroyed his life, and now the child comes back. All the father wants is the child back to embrace him and hug him and love him. What about the past? The father couldn't care about the past. The father says, thank God, the past no longer exists. That's the way Hashem embraces the Baal Tshuva. The past sins mean nothing. That you came back is something which is so magnificent. It's not to be believed. You become a star. I remember when Carter took down so many countries. He put them out of business. Who destroyed South Africa? Carter. Who destroyed Rhodesia? Carter. All these, who destroyed the Philippines? Carter. Every one of these governments were taken down by Carter. What was the problem? So what has happened since then? South Africa, they far from perfect. But as a functioning country, the citizenry, today you walk in the street there, you don't know if you're going to come out alive or not. It's survival of the fittest. Every one of these countries, they were taken down to a level, not even talking about economically, even social community, what the communities are over there. What does he accomplish? Why? Because Carter doesn't understand the culture. Every culture is a culture, not like the American culture. Here we're dealing with a different type of human being. You're educated. You've been involved in the civilization, a different type of civilization. There's certain societies, they only understand one thing. Tough love. I'm not saying they should be abused. I'm not saying that. But you know something? When the various tribes, they fight, they hack each other to death. That's it. That's the way they deal with one another. But you want to recreate an American society in Rhodesia and in South Africa. It doesn't work. You deal with a different human being. The way they're wired differently than we're wired here. That's what it's all about. And it's not because they were slaves here. The Jews were slaves for 210 years in Egypt. We were also slaves. What happened when we left? We behaved like slaves. Even as slaves, we didn't behave as slaves. Although we were limited, we had an incarcerated status. It's a different reality. So to think you're going to change something which is not possible to change, or it takes generations to change. Person has to be taken out of the environment for generations that these changes should take place. No, we're going to give them that freedom and they'll do it. So look what's happened. They turned it into a human cesspool. That's what they turned it into. So a person goes Baal Tshuva, did many things he shouldn't have done. Society says, you're a lowly nobody because of your past. You know something? It's around what you think. It's the way Hashem evaluates me. I'm only into the way God sees, in God's eyes. You understand? You're not my judge. You're not my life. My life is God. I only came back because of that. So now I'm going to allow you to evaluate me, to pass judgment who I am and who I'm not. But you realize you become a religious fanatic, because who ever heard of such a thing? I could write a check you can't write. The answer is, you think you're going to get into the world to come because you can write that big check? What gets you in the world to come is who do you write that check? It's not what kind of check could you write. But you know what kind of portfolio of real estate I have? And what do you do with it? Once God pulls the plug on you, what's all the real estate worth? The family doesn't even want to pay for the funeral bill, for the mortuary after you die, because they're busy building their own Taj Mahals. Many years ago, I was asked, a very wealthy family, traditional family, that I could speak. They were meeting at the Essex House, and they had somebody coming up from Georgia, that this woman was an advisor about how to give charity. And she was going to structure a whole charitable perspective, how the family should give charity together. The father then was a billionaire already. I'm not going to give too much information. And he says when he goes to the cemetery, he dies, he wants to be the poorest guy in the cemetery. because he wants his children to give away their wealth to help those who don't have. Okay, that's what he said. Factually, he didn't die much sooner. He died, wasn't very old. The kids inherited everything. They couldn't care less if he ever existed. So I go there, and I give the Jewish perspective of charity. I saw a level of disrespect between the children were in their upper teens, in their 20s. Many of them were in Ivy League universities out of town. The way they interacted with their parents, the level of disrespect, I'm not used to seeing that kind of disrespect. This is a Jewish family. Well, I could write any check I want. Why don't you look at your kids, what kind of kids you have? Do you think they care who you are, what you are? All that matters to them is where that money is going to be shifted once you bite the dust. That's all they want to know. So I have to be concerned with the way you see me. You couldn't even raise a family. And you're going to pass judgment on me because I've become a religious fanatic because I'm doing things the way Jews used to do it. But you want to know something? We're very much affected by this. How other people see me, how they perceive me, how they value me. But if a person is confident within himself that he's doing the right thing, it's irrelevant what you think. It's what I know. If I know I'm in good standing with God, I'm beloved, and valued, I'm precious, it's irrelevant what you say. It doesn't make a difference what you think or what you say or what you believe. I don't feel inferior to you. I feel even superior because I'm in a better place than you are. Below old, Eloshishchoro harbe mode, harbe. For doing that mitzvah, his reward for doing a mitzvah is greater than a tzaddik who does that same mitzvah. Why? Because he already has an addiction to doing the wrong thing. And despite that addiction, he's going against the grain. A tzaddik who never sinned, he doesn't have that addiction that he doesn't have to fight his demons. This guy has to fight his demons. Because as much as he's doing the right thing, it's an uphill battle. He's pushing a boulder up a mountain. Upirsh mimenu v'kovash yitzro. He separated himself and he suppressed his inclination. So the whole issue is, even a person comes about tshuva, you're the same person of the past. You may behave differently, but the issues of the past are still, your past is still part of your presence. That's what makes it so much difficult. And despite that, you do the right thing. And since there's a principle, lefum tzara agro, based on the level of sacrifice, that determines the quality of the action. So therefore, because the challenges of the Baal Tshuva is greater because of the past, therefore his level of accomplishment is valued to a greater degree in the eyes of God for that reason. Okay? I'll give you an example. I'm not going to record this.